As a technology provider, we look at a situation right now that everybody suffers from very bad critics, as you said, binary options. Recently, Israel banned binary options, and I think that it's a beginning of something, and everybody needs to talk about it today and discuss why it's happening. And let's be fair, there is a problem, everybody knows. There is a technology area, and there is the process and the hustle of regulation, and there is, of course, the area of call center, aggressive, hungry salespeople. They want to make some money, and each one pushed to a different side. We get to a point where there is a situation where countries are getting banned of binary options, that it might be even worse. So I think we will discuss it.
Hi, I'm Mark Kelly, Professional Services Director at Abide Financial. Abide is an arm, that's an approved reporting mechanism for MiFID I reporting in the UK, and we are also a hub for reporting of EMEA transactions. So we report for a lot of binary options and forex firms here in Cyprus. As far as binary options are concerned, in the UK, they have never been seen as financial instruments, so they haven't been reportable, whatever the underlying for MiFID I, and the FCA doesn't even require them to be reported for EMEA. That is going to change, and they're not going to be banned, but they are going to be brought within regulation, and the Treasury, the UK Treasury, has already drafted the legislation to define binary options as financial instruments. So they are going to come in and be reportable under MiFIA, and at the same time, when that regulation comes in, they'll be reportable in the UK for EMEA. Within the broader European framework, I think binary options potentially are going to be among the most affected by the new regulation coming in January 2018, the MiFIA or MiFID II trade reporting. And the reason for that is that such a lot of the binary options market is dependent on what looks like an exchange structure. That is, there are big platform providers who match up buying and selling interests. As soon as they register as an organized trading facility or an MTF, all of their brokers are effectively trading a venue-traded product. That has to have an ISIN attached to it, and everyone who uses it has to report it. So you will end up with the absurd situation of, a 60-second expiry binary option call based on euro-dollar will have an ISIN attached to it, and everyone who trades it, every broker who trades it, is going to have to report both the market and the client side of it. So binary options unusually is going to be more affected by this regulation than a lot of the other sectors.
And are we seeing regulations becoming prohibitive for brokers? Are the costs too high?
In my view, generally speaking, no. I think in some jurisdictions, clearly, when people think of places like London, New York, it's on no one's mind to set up a new big business over there because of the regulation cost. Generally speaking, various regulators have different pricing, but some of them are pricing people out. I think the ban that they did in Israel on binary, in my view, it's a mistake. They should engage in discussion with the companies and perhaps over-regulate it to give themselves time to find out what's going on. And outright bans like that, in my view, are just destructive.
I have to agree with Oren's saying, but back to the binary options. I actually disagree with Mark in terms of binary options, that it's a MiFID product. It comes under the regulation. They've already decided, under the EU, that it's a proper product. And then what Israel did, as far as banning it, that was really a very unique situation where they just decided whether it was a headline risk or whatever reasons that they wanted to remove it. In the overall EU, I find it, it will take a lot more running around in circles for the regulators to actually make decisions and get everybody to go on board to change how they're going to look at binary options. I know that what Mark is alluding to, and as far as having an exchange product like what they do in the US, that does exist, but they never had it as a non-exchange product in the US. It's a little different. So to actually see Europe take binary options, which is completely permitted under MiFID, that would take a lot of gumption on their part to really kind of like change things up as far as they're looking at securities. And once you start taking a different look at how you are defining securities, then that's going to open up Pandora's box with a whole bunch of other things, and that could, that could start affecting high leverage CFDs, rolling FX, and lots of different things. So I'm not necessarily convinced that they're on their way to do that yet. I'm jumping around with questions.
I think that, we have a lot of people here, so let's make it a little bit more interesting and create some debate here. Let's put the bomb here in the middle and say, what's happened in Israel is just example of the reality. And the reality is that the authorities understood that in front of them there is right now a situation that is mixed between conflicts of software providers that manipulate prices. They have on the other side call centers that brought people with extensive aggressiveness that used to sell cosmetics abroad, and they come and transfer themselves to financial. It's not happening in the UK, it's happening in Israel. And we need to understand that with all this fun and a huge amount of money, it's also a product of people to money laundering. And put everything together, we have a problem.
Yeah, but
and
that applies for everything. I mean, if you look at regulated brokers, how many binary options regulated brokers have closed down and run away with money? As far as I know, zero. Forex has had a bunch that's done that. You have a bunch of all sorts of other online businesses. So if you're starting to bring in and say that you could use these type of online business to do money laundering, that's true in any type of online business. But if you bring it back to whether binary options has a problem, you're right. As an unregulated product, it happens that there's a lot of negativity there because, like any unregulated product. But do you see it being any worse than?
No, I think it's a matter of again, it's a simplified product and it's a great trading tool, and just people misuse it. And in every open environment where there is no restriction, people act differently. And they took this product to the extreme, and this is the result. And we are, as TradeSmarter, as a software company, we decided never to work with companies working in Israel because the regulation was not set. And when when companies like are doing it, it's also put a lot of opportunities to other companies to join the celebration. And this is what happened. And if you look at SciSec, who in my opinion is doing a very good steps, it's a little bit takes a long time, but they're doing it. They should understand what are the problems. The future, in my opinion, is somehow to restrict the call center aggressiveness and make this product back to be trading and not something else. Because people today use this platform, I would say, the trading platform as something else. And I think this is the problem.
In terms of the question about the cost of regulation, we've already seen some smaller brokers who are just trying to pass through retail client trades to liquidity providers actually have to exit certain business lines because they're having to report to the client side, the hedge side. By the time they factor in the cost of reporting and updating the valuations on all of those things, it destroys the turn that they're making on the spread that they're making on the transaction. So we're already seeing the effects of what I think is the regulators' lack of familiarity with the products that they're regulating. I think there's an awful lot, especially in EMEA, there's an awful lot of collateral damage because the regulation was all written with big interbank swaps in mind. What they weren't thinking about was rolling spot forex or binary options or a 50 pence a point spread bet on the FTSE. All of those got dragged into the regulation and they've all got to be reported in just as much detail as the big interbank swaps, and that raises the costs, sometimes to the point where the business can't stand it.
Another question regarding that is that we see companies that are, they have registered offices in London, right? But they don't have any license, and they're contacting clients. And it seems, you know, apart from the, let's say, Americans, nobody is taking action against unregulated brokers in regulated markets. Is that something that you think regulators are failing at their job at right now?
I think, well, I've actually never come across one of those companies where there is a broker that's really on a scale is doing stuff outside of the oversight of the regulator, especially in London and New York. But if they are, and if they're getting big and the regulator doesn't catch them, then that's a huge issue. But I personally don't think it's a big issue currently in those markets. They don't need more people or more regulation there. It's pretty well regulated in London and New York. Personally, I haven't seen that kind of thing where there's a call center that's under the radar trying to sell stuff, and I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not seeing that. I do see regular missives coming out from SciSec and from the FCA warning about people who are representing themselves as regulated brokers who actually aren't. But I don't see that there's a big iceberg of unregulated brokers. Maybe they're the unregulated ones are the ones who call me up and ask me to open an account on, you know, a regular basis. But I don't see it as a huge problem in the industry.
Ron, is
Yeah, you must have very good clients in ADS if you're not seeing it. I tend to think that there's a large problem as far as the regulators not doing enough to support their regulated entities that are under there that have license with them. So I hear a lot of times that, you know, let's take the AMF. So France has become one of the more aggressive regulators as far as warning people. So what they'll do is they'll put out, this broker is not allowed to market in France, and they're marketing France. Be warned, we have suspicions against them. But how many people are really reading these warnings? You know, what happens, it goes on a website, you look up that broker, you might see it, but they might change their name the next day, or they'll do some good CEO work and push down all the regulated warnings. So they're not really necessarily being that aggressive to really stop unregulated brokers from working in regulated markets. I think there are a couple options that they could do. We know in the US, in the gambling world, one of the examples that's often brought is when the US decided, when they got rid of online gambling, so what did they do? They just told the credit card companies, they said, okay, no more accepting credit card deposits from gambling companies. And then that was it. Overnight, they pretty much closed it down. So you have opportunities like that. If you have a list of clients, I know there's a lot of shell companies and different things. There is an opportunity for regulators to work together to find out, okay, we want to stop payments. You know, if you follow the money, if you're able to stop the money, you're allowed to stop a lot of brokers. Italy, a couple of years ago in Consult, what they did is they went to the telecom companies and said, these 35 brokers, these binary options brokers are marketing in Italy, and they're doing it illegally. So they went to the telecom companies and they banned all their IPs. Now that's something they obviously can adjust and fix, but that for a week or two, you know, affect all these brokers. So there are ways for them to kind of be, you know, be more aggressive in stopping unregulated brokers from working in the regular brokers. And from regulated brokers I speak to, I hear this a lot, that they feel that SciSec and other regulators aren't doing enough to stop those type of brokers.
Okay, so it's not my exact relevant area, but I would say from companies that work with us, they get this feedback also from SciSec right now to move the compliance team and the sales team to Cyprus. In the end of the day, it depends on the regulator to be more strict and to request. The whole idea here, if you look at it, it's the cost. And people need to understand to run a proper operation. It costs a few million dollars. People want to sell, even from the software company. It was in the beginning, everyone wanted to get to the business. It's like 100K and you can start the operation, and it's not like that anymore. We at Trade Smarter, we decided to work with the tier 1 companies and to focus with very specific clientele, because this is where it goes. And in the end of the day, is budget. You need to have a big budget to start an operation, and not like it used to be.
So, but going back to what you said before, so do you think the problem is with the model, the business model, or the problem is with the people that came into the industry in binary options?
Regarding binary options, again, it attracts a lot of people from the gaming industry and people that come with sales, very strong sales aggressiveness background. So the result is obvious, is an industry with very powerful people with budgets to buy marketing and to sell aggressiveness. That's what creates now different industries. It's not a real trading like in the UK. If you compare the forex in the UK, it's something in the middle of gaming and trading companies. I think that in the end of the day, company that wants to get to a proper operation, they will need to transfer themselves to become salespeople that not mislead the customers, but works exactly like according to the guidelines. And this is the difference between someone that wants to sell you everything to someone that works in a proper financial institution.
And let's say I do get a UK license, a UK regulation, because I think it's good for my brand, but I don't want to have all that cumbersome regulation on all my trades. I can still, send a part of my business to the UK, mainly UK citizens and EU citizens, but offload the rest to somewhere with lighter regulation. Is that something that you see people do?
Yep. I think, see, the dilemma for the regulators is this, that there's a network out there and it's growing and it's getting faster and everyone's connected. So to ban something somewhere and think that you're protecting your consumers or protecting anything, it doesn't work that easily. You have to coordinate globally. I think financial regulators can really, by banning things like the way they did here, for example, they can kill innovation. It's in their hands to regulate in a nice way and create innovation and support innovation. But usually they're not aware of what is needed to do that. They're just a little bit disconnected with the industry. In many cases, we've seen one of the best regulators in Turkey, for example, where they requested the brokers to pay a fee. They charged them a fee, set up a group ran by the brokers and the central bank to regulate themselves. And they are paying for it. So so you need a huge coordination between the regulator and the brokers, et cetera, to be able to have a system that's working. This could have worked over there, in Israel, where they banned. Instead of a ban, they could have asked the top guys, pay us $50,000 each per year. We'll set up a regulator. We will be all over this regulation. Instead, they just banned it, and they killed a whole industry, really, that's probably going under the radar now. That's definitely not the right way. In terms of companies, I think all the big brokers have many companies in different regulations, and they'll use that to their advantage. If it's easier to trade in the UAE for us, we'll trade in UAE. If for China it's in our Hong Kong office is the benefit, we'll go for our Hong Kong office. That's definitely there.
What do you think of this?
Just curious what you said about Turkey. What has it done to the market? Is it better now?
Initially, when Turkey regulated their brokers, the regulation there came very late, 2011. Everyone thought this is the end of the FX world. It's just had a huge increase in number of accounts. They have something very unique where every single retail client has to have their money with the central bank. So you send $100, you can see tomorrow on a website that your money is with the central bank. To set up that system was paid for by the brokers, and they complain. They always complain saying, oh, regulation, but they've grown massively. They had 4 licenses, now they have 45 regulated brokers. 4 of them use MT4. It's incredible to see how our market is going that way and improving the situation for the clients and for the brokers. And then you have the other end of the spectrum where you have countries like, like Iran, where they totally banned the whole thing. And we know that hundreds of millions of dollars are moving to unregulated jurisdictions because of that. So banning is definitely not the answer.
I makes more on what you're saying then. So then back to the question, then I think naturally if there is a more accommodating regulator, then you're one and that understands your product better, then you're always going to want to move your clients into that direction. So if you have clients in the UK, you know, you want to put them in the UK, but if you have a UK and a site broker and you have a product that maybe it's like social trading that maybe is not so accommodating for the UK, then you'll go to that broker which is more accommodating. So I think the idea of alluding to also here that you have different regions that might be more specialized in understanding the products a little bit better for the clients does make a lot more sense, and then it would make more sense to kind of diversify where you're sending them to fit their needs.
But won't we see, you know, eventually, like I think happened in Australia, that they didn't like people playing this regulatory arbitrage. They didn't like it when people, you know, pick and choose what they use and, you know, have their sign of approval. Do you see that coming in as a problem, Yoni?
Well, I mean, as soon as the regulations come in, the sort of MiFIR regulation, the EMIR regulation, that's a one-size-fits-all across Europe. So you start to get, there's no advantage to switch around within Europe, and that will push some brokers outside of the EU, and there's nothing you can actually do about that. You can't stop someone opening up in another jurisdiction and trying to sell in. But that doesn't necessarily just move the business over there, because clients have a say in all of this, and clients want to trade with someone who is reputable, and they want to make sure that their money is protected. They want to see, you know, financial services compensation scheme where all of the brokers have to pay in, so if they go bust, they get something back. And that's the reason why a lot of brokers who don't need to open up offices in the UK because they could perfectly passport in there, they actually take the step, they go through the pain of getting registered with the FCA and opening up entities there, just so that they can have that badge to say they're regulated by the FCA, because that actually has a competitive advantage. That brings in customers who otherwise might be wary of entering the market at all. So the fact that, you know, there are other places to go doesn't necessarily mean that all of the customers will head over there in droves.
And beyond just you know, the peace of mind, what does regulation actually give you as a client, as a trader? What's the actual advantages of it, of trading with, let's say, an honest broker who's unregulated or is in a less regulated jurisdiction than you know, a broker that has that seal of approval? Like, how do you know that the regulators actually protect you? Right?
Well, I think it's just a matter of confidence. It's confidence in the regulator. We all know that there are kind of different standards of regulation even around Europe. So, you know, you get the badge of the people that you know have a track record of paying out compensation to customers who've been defrauded, and people who are issuing fines on a regular basis to people who aren't following the regulations. I think there's almost a mental league table of where you want your brokers to be based in order to feel comfortable about doing business with them.
Ron, do you have thoughts on that?
I think doesn't matter where you regulate it, you can always have fraud take place. And I definitely agree with Mark, says you have to look at that trust factor and that this track record that companies happen. You know, in PFG, there was like, people lost like $300 million over there, and that was a US broker, and it changed a lot of the laws there, but that's an example where even the US was, at the time, was viewed as this top regulator. It was, you know, a lot of money lost there. So,
Yoni?
I just want to add that what bothers many brokers is that the regulation creates a huge difference of onboarding clients. And once you go over the requirements, marketers will push different brokers to go on a different route. So this is how everything starts moving. And I think that it's a problem because what really needed to be is a better connection between the software companies and the regulation itself, and to create some marketing technology to shorten the distance between the two. I'll give you an example. Auto validation, it's a KYC validation that happens in Australia for many years, and still not approved by SISEC. Okay, so every client that works in the EU need to go through different very long process. If it's a questionnaire and then onboarding documents before he click on deposit. Where in other places, if you under different regulation, FCA and ASIC, you can use auto validation third parties that basically check your name, phone number, and address, make the match, and let you on board very quickly. So when you use your mobile phone, for example, with 2 clicks, you can put your credit card and start trading. That's the dream of every operator. But it's not going to work in the way it's worked right now. So what's happened? People prefer to move to unregulated area where they can actually work with tons of marketing budget and bring many clients in self-deposit, what they call. So there is a distance here, and you talk about innovation, and this is exactly the part that is missing, is to take this distance and shorten it to a place where it will be easy, but it will be safe. And this is the bottom line. It's true for the call centers. The bigger call center you have, the more risk for fraud salespeople or misleading customers. The more you have automation system, you will see that you have no problems and less fraud. So something in the middle will create this industry clean, and then places like Israel won't be banned. Someone need to come and understand, because there is no way that only the regulation will push one side or only the marketer will push on the other side. There is a solution in the middle, and if you look at other examples in life, it's all about technology. Facebook, for example, just I'm gonna say something. If you go to Facebook as a social network, you go to permission, to the account setting, you can control almost everything you want. And there is the option of controlling how many people will see your post, how many times, who will see it. And all of this is basically create technology that allows you to solve issues of social networks. Many companies before tried to do social networks and they failed. And this was my previous experience before I came to Trade Smarter. So I can tell you that this is the missing sauce that right now everybody understand. Companies like Plus 500 did an amazing job, automate the compliance, the sales, the operation, so they can focus on mass market, regulated, with less amount of fraud as possible.
I think what Yoni was talking about is something that I think very few people are speaking about, and it's very important because I've spoken to a couple of people, and definitely even last year, chargebacks was a huge problem. But as KYC, as the regulators have become more let's say, aggressive as much as more enacting the rules of KYC and AML, so it's knocked out a lot of clients that wouldn't be working with a regulated broker. So I've heard from quite a few brokers that their chargeback percentage has actually gone lower. So they're dealing with less fraud. So I think on one hand, when you're having less fraud take place from your customers, the brokers themselves have a higher quality of customers that they're dealing with that would most likely also improve the type of product that they're also allowed to bring, which improves their ability to be trustworthy in working with their customers. So, yeah, it's something that I haven't heard too many people speak about, but it's definitely like that AML and technology is definitely impacting bringing in better customers into the market.
It's worth mentioning that however smart the technology is that's brought into play around onboarding, that's going to have to be aligned with some very serious requirements for knowing your customer coming in January 2018. And that includes having national identifiers for all of your retail clients, which will vary depending where what nationality they are. So for some you will have to collect, a Portuguese identity card number. For non-EEA people it'll be the passport number, or for anyone that you can't get any of that information, it's a concatenation of their name and their date of birth and their country of origin. So you're going to have to, it's not going to be a 5-minute process, it's not going to be completely automatable, but you're going to have that level of information about all of your clients in order to make a compliant transaction report.
Mark, you've mentioned the changes in law in Europe. Can you explain to us, what's going to come online and, how brokers need to adapt to that?
You mean the regulatory landscape? If we roll ahead a couple of years, I mean, this won't affect everyone in here, but we've got a big EMEA rewrite coming up within about a year, but we don't know exactly when. And everyone, no matter how compliant your EMEA systems currently are, there's 40% additional fields to be done, and a lot of difference to be reported in terms of the margin that's coming in as well as going out. So you're going to have to get your IT heads around that, while at the same time preparing for MiFIR, which is a completely separate reporting requirement. You'll still carry on reporting EMEA to a trade repository. You'll report for MiFIR all of your trades to a national competent authority, normally via an approved reporting mechanism. On the back of that, for the other investment firms, for the bigger, more complex banks and so on, there's SFTR, which is securities financing reporting. So all of the repos and equity financing trades are also to be reported, this time again to a trade repository. So anyone who's got any kind of complexity in the firm, you've got a retail side, or you're hedging with venue traded products, you're going to have to look at the whole landscape and divert your IT department potentially from supporting the business to supporting regulatory reporting, or do what an increasing number of clients are suggesting to us, which is to outsource the reporting. That is to externalize the data warehouse and let someone else make the decision about what goes to each regulator and under each regime.
Ron, do you think, I know what answer, but how would you recommend retail brokers to adapt to these changes that Mark talked about? Is that automation? Is that outsourcing?
Yeah, so both Mark and I, we both involved with those third-party products. Obviously, we're biased in what companies to use as far as dealing with reporting and EMIR in the future MiFID II. I think one of the most important items when it comes to reporting, which is where there's going to be a lot of the issues, is when people talk about blockchain, why do people care about blockchain? It's really all these reporting, blockchain transactions, it comes down to databases. It's like, how do you get a whole bunch of information, databases, and how do you work with that? So I think as Mark spoke about, like having the IT team prepare for it, I think on the basic level, there has to be this understanding that you have to be really focused on understanding how you're storing, how you're working with that, how you're going to be providing that for other people to be manipulating and using your databases. So it doesn't matter whether you're doing this in-house, have someone else doing it, you have some external CRM that's you're working with. It's a lot of database management, and how do I make that available for other people, whether it's in-house in my team or other people, to be able to handle that and do the work for reporting, CRM, whatever it is. So I think people have to take that focus on, how do I become more flexible with handling my database?
I think if we look at what's happening here, basically, is that it's a good example for us. We have an office in London, UAE, Hong Kong, and Singapore. And our IT guys are busy with regulation in London. And by the sounds of it, the next 2 to 3 years, they'll be even more busy with this stuff. And they will complete a lot of projects, and they will think they've completed a lot of nice things, and they'll be happy about it. But the truth is, at the end of it, they haven't done anything, no innovation for customers in that sense. So in my view, the innovation for end clients and for us will not happen in our London office because of regulation. So we are much more free to think about how to improve things for our clients and for other brokers, etc., out of our, for example, UAE office, where we can genuinely say within the framework of the law we can innovate instead of our focus. 90% of our CTO's focus and headaches over the next 2 to 3 years being this issue, which is perhaps why we should outsource it to you.
I think the proxy is, I always heard this, if you see your compliance people or legal people going out to drink on their own, that's when you have to definitely start outsourcing it.
I can say that TradeSmart, 30% of our work right now is toward the compliance adjustment, mobile questionnaire, auto-validation, and different innovation that we're adding to our back-office CRM. We're a bit different because our solution is a full solution, and 95% of our B2B customers get basically the CRM, affiliate system, the trading platform. So we feel responsible for them. And we work very closely with these legal entities and consultants that really understand what needs to be done in order to achieve the exact requirements that are coming up every month. We're getting it every day. And it's something that, in my opinion, it's important to be together because think about a mobile application that right now you need to update questionnaire. The questionnaire cannot come from a different URL. It's a mobile application that right now in the store, and it must be part of the actual trading platform. So this is why I believe it should be a one solution, and this is why a company like us need to put at least 30% of our resources in order to make those adjustments.
So we talked about European regulations, but one thing we rarely hear talked about is FACTA, the U.S. regulation that's, trying to go all over the world and make sure that everyone complies with their demands for their, for their residents, for U.S. residents. And is that something that you see as, first of all, is it a correct thing to do? How do brokers adapt to it? And should more regulators do something like a FACTA?
There's a few elements to the U.S. regulations, of course. U.S. has less than 5% of the world's population. But the dollar has a huge amount of the currency trading in the world. So if you're looking at the consumer side, you're looking at 5% of the world's consumers in that sense, perhaps 15% of the world's economy. If you're looking at the dollar leg of FX trading, it's a huge amount. So you don't want to be in a position where they say, okay, you can't trade dollars. You're out of the dollar system. It's happened to a lot of companies in the past, and it nearly broke them. Even big banks like, European banks like UBS, BNP, etc. So you don't want to be on the wrong side of the dollar regulator. And that's the reason people have to follow those regulations. Simple as that. It's not because, I don't think it's not because people see US regulator as more aggressive or anything like that. It's simply a necessity.
I think that there's a lot of innovation taking place on like companies like KYC.com and Market, that there's definitely not on the retail section, but more on the larger global companies and the banks, that they're trying to create these sort of solutions that are cross-border, that are really global in order to understand who your clients are. And a lot of that began because when the US basically wanted to get all this tax, you talked about the dollars. So the US decided that there's billions of dollars in Switzerland that they're not taxing, and they want to be able to get their hands on that. So they put the Department of Justice involved, and then a lot of these rules kind of start spiraling because of that. But on the high level, I do see quite a few different initiatives to have a lot of more collaboration between a lot of the bigger companies. So if I were a smaller company, I would probably just be piggybacking on whatever they're doing, because they're doing this for, you know, transfers of money for trillions of dollars, and a smaller company might be doing this for hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, and you don't necessarily want to be inventing something that it's a huge issue for these massive companies, and, you know, let's just, if they're solving it, there's no reason to reinvent something that's being solved already.
Yeah, I mean, we are very largely focused on European reporting, and around the fringes, if clients come to us and they're interested in, we'll accommodate Dodd-Frank Act reporting for the US and MAS reporting for Singapore and the ASIC Australian reporting. But we haven't had people come to us and talk about FATCA, or our clients aren't asking us for solutions in those areas. So I'm assuming that, you know, maybe we've got a particular segment of the population, but we're not seeing that being asked for an awful lot.
Another topic that's in the news recently with regard to regulation is last look. That we've seen discussion about last look both in the UK and also right here in Cyprus regulation, even with regard to binary options. Who has the last look, and for how long, and is it a legitimate thing? I wanted to get your thoughts about it, if you have.
Yeah, last look basically is when a market maker, let's say a bank, holds a trade for, let's say, 1 second or half a second. So the trade comes in from the client, they hold it for half a second, then they decide at the end of it whether they want to execute that trade. It's a half a second delay, let's say, and at the end of it they can say not executed or executed. Now, that means that they have a slight advantage against you. So they could take the trade when they feel they can make money on it, and they could reject it when they feel that and this is not worth taking the risk on. Now, that itself creates liquidity, as in it creates better spreads. So without the last look, people would say, listen, I'm willing to give you a much wider spread than, and you can execute and you will get done. Regulator says I can't reject you. So definitely it would change the structure. In my view, last look is needed. But I can understand that, of course, if you look at the whole industry and the amounts of trades going through, it looks like a massive front-running scheme by banks where they're making huge amounts of money based on the fact that they can have a slight edge on every single trade. So it's a very difficult question. It's a question of, are you willing to pay more and not have last look? And that would also kill a lot of the stuff in the industry.
I think that last look is also becoming a technology question. So maybe 8 years ago when people were slower and things, they go, oh, it's a 5 pip spread on the euro dollar, and I could price that to my clients. But especially with MiFID 2 coming along, so one of the items I was seeing about quite a few technology providers have been doing is they've been preparing customers for transaction cost analysis software. They're saying, okay, use this software, it helps you understand what your clients are doing, how your flow is, so you'll be a better idea, more educated to understand how last look is affecting you. And when you have that information, it's easier for you to then speak to your liquidity providers to get the better quotes. So I think as a technology gets better, we're going to see last look becomes less of an issue because the buy side is more educated on how to protect themselves from it. And that's becoming a tool as when MiFID 2 comes in and there's going to be reports about execution quality, then a lot of these issues will become moot in that you can only get away with so much. Even if you're doing last look, there'll be, instead of maybe a half-second delay, there might be like 100 milliseconds, something like that. So there's going to be a lot of different limitations that are coming along that, because of technology, that are limit what you can actually do with the last look.
I think that it will create some side effects, and that not everybody are aware right now, but all those decisions that comes from a problem sometimes create a side effect, and we'll see what will happen. especially in the binary option, it's a bit different. So it's a challenge.
I haven't seen Last Look explicitly make its way into the regulations or the drafts yet, but it will certainly be affected by things like the best execution policies that people have to roll out, and the increased transparency around what prices have been obtained in the market, which will all be part of the MiFID II package. So whatever discussions there are about the merits at the moment, I think it will be a bit of wait and see as to how the new market structures will affect the way it works.
You've mentioned, with regard to Last Look, the effects on, in the media. So now we're seeing a lot of news around high-frequency trading, right? And though it's like front-loading, it's usually regarding stocks, but does the negative PR affect regulators and causes them, from your perspective, to be more aggressive on other industries?
I mean, the issue here is, I guess, in terms of regulation and all this, is that if you're a client and you have $200,000 and you want to put it somewhere, it might look like it's better to put it in New York or London or wherever, but it seems when we look back the last 10 years over the lawsuits, etc., that it's not so clear. As a client, it might well be that another jurisdiction is much better protected, better regulation, but you would need a PhD in that subject to be able to determine where is the best place to put your $200,000 if you want to trade. But in terms of regulation, I think, what's happening here is that people are going back and suing these big banks, saying you made $10 billion over the last 10 years on this, which wasn't illegal and still isn't illegal, but we think you made a lot of money on this and it's unfair. So Last Look is a very, very difficult subject in my view. Personally, I think you need to have the option of having it another thing where you shouldn't ban it. You can regulate, regulate the hell out of it, but you shouldn't ban it. You could go and say, like you mentioned, you can have the TCA tools, all the tools attached to it, and say you're allowed to use it with these tools, but you shouldn't ban it.
So I see we've reached the end of our time. So just last words about what do you think about our market with regard to regulation? How do we handle it? Let's start at home.
Well, I think it seems like our IT department in London is going to be very busy on that for the next couple of years. It looks like it could be a never-ending thing where it can go on for 5 or 10 years. It's been going on for 5 years already. When we hear things like regulations coming in next year, maybe, and everyone says you have to be prepared, but we don't know for what and when. It's pretty scary story in Europe, in my view. But it's looking better in other jurisdictions, to be honest.
I think on just the overall in the industry, I think there's a need for, so if we bring it back to the retail, because there's a lot of people who are coming from in the audience, there's a need for the retail industry itself to work more together. Because if you have, if you want to make change and if you want SISEC to have certain things you want to be more aggressive about or more lenient about, I think you need, the top 10 brokers talking together to make changes. And you see, it worked in. Obviously it was spearheaded by the regulators in Turkey, but you do have situations where when top companies work together, they are able to make certain changes. And I definitely know in the UK, there have been a few, under the cover type of cases where there's 3 or 4 of the top brokers have gone to the regulators and say, listen, this broker is doing something we don't like doing. They're not regulated here. They shouldn't be here. They're doing it. And then you'll see a little bit of more action on their part. So if companies here, or the UK can kind of come together in order to look for common goals, I believe that there is a lot of, there would be a lot of benefit in doing that.
So if we take the previous panel about automation and we connect it to the regulation restriction and the issue that many jurisdictions right now are going to suffer from all of those restrictions. I think that the idea is to shorten the distance between the regulation requirements and the technology, and use more automation, more technology that can help reduce the cost, because once the cost is high, people need to hire more people to get more money from customers. So it's one circle, and somebody need to look from the side and say what is good, because to create a higher retention in order to cover the costs is better than reducing the cost and be efficient and be transparent and not mislead customers. I think someone need to take a role here and take a decision. Every company comes with different values and different ethics. In the end of the day, a company needs to decide how they want to run the business. If it's regulated, you should go with that. If it's not, go with the other direction. But this mixture that today companies have, take the regulation only to whitelist themselves, it's a huge problem, and we need to stop it right now. Otherwise, it will create a situation like in Israel, where it was too late. And the reason why it's happening in Israel is because it was too late, too many complaints. I'm not sure if you look at all of those weekly newsletters and articles that came specifically from salespeople that had issues with clients. So this needs to be stopped.
I would just like, we've talked a lot about the complexity of the regulation coming up. We haven't mentioned one source of uncertainty in the regulation, at least from the UK perspective, which is the possibility of the UK exiting the European Union. The thing that I don't think is going to happen if we do exit is it's not going to be Wild West. It's not going to be a sort of an unregulated kind of super version of the Cayman Islands. It's more likely, actually, because the FCA is a tough regulator, and they were a tough regulator in their earlier incarnations before MiFID came along, before the European Union came along. What's more likely is that they'll gold plate. They'll gold plate because there are things that they aren't getting out of things like the MiFIR regulation that they would like to get, such as the regulation of Forex, any kind of CFDs or rolling spot Forex based on spot trades won't be reportable under MiFIR. They would like to establish an equivalence and to drag those things into regulation and get those reportable. They wrote a lot of the MiFIR, the TMU, the Transaction Monitoring Unit within the FCA, wrote a lot of the MiFIR text, and they would like to preserve that, partly because they like how it's turned out, and also because they want to establish equivalence. They don't want to cut the string and have nobody prepared to trade with Britain because it's a lawless environment. If anything, they will increase the level of regulation and reporting requirements so that everyone knows that it's still a safe place to do business.
Okay, I think we covered a lot, but it's a big world. But thank you very much to all the panelists.